Welcome to How Leaders Lead. I'm Koula Callahan, here to bring you another edition of 3 More Questions with David Novak. David, we've got a fun one today because we're talking about your conversation with Doug Hirsch, who is the husband of Holly Anderson, and it's our first husband and wife duo we've ever had on the podcast.
Yeah, they might just be one of the top power couples in the world. I mean, you know, he's renowned in the world in finance, and she's a renowned cardiologist, and they've been married for a long time, have a beautiful family, and kind of represent everything you'd want to have represented in a couple and a family. So really pleased to have Doug on it.
Doug's amazing. We should get them a plaque that says first married couple to both appear on the How Leaders Lead podcast.
I think both of them have a lot more recognition and trophies and plaques that they would speak, think a little bit more highly of. But you may be right. Let's do it.
Well, Doug also owns the Arizona Drive professional pickleball team. He is a huge pickleballer, and I loved this conversation. He covered everything from pickleball to chess, to his experience in the finance industry. It's a fascinating conversation, and I listened to it and felt super inspired. So I'm excited, David, to get your take on some of the stuff you talked with Doug about. So let's get going. Question number 1. Doug takes his physical fitness very seriously, and he believes that you can't perform at your best mentally if you aren't at your best physically. What's your take on that, David? I mean, do leaders everywhere need to be physically fit in order to perform?
Well, I think leaders come in all shapes and sizes. There's no question about that. But I think anyone is better off when they're physically fit. You know, it gives you more energy, makes you mentally sharper. You feel better about yourself. It gives you confidence. So I really think that being physically fit and taking the time to make sure that you are is something that everybody should build into their routine. And I know, Doug works out a lot, and it's one of the reasons why he's become such an outstanding pickleball player in the over 60 age group. I mean, he's a national amateur champion and now is playing as a senior pro. You couldn't do that if you weren't in good shape. For myself, I always thought it was very important to work out before I went to work, and because I think it really helped me with my energy and got me prepared for the day ahead. So yeah, there are a lot of people who really aren't that physically fit that obviously become great leaders. But I think for your own personal health, your long-term longevity, it just makes sense to do everything you can to stay in shape.
I totally agree, David. In September of this year, I don't know that I've even told you this. In September of this year, so it's been a couple months at this point, I committed to myself that I was going to wake up every morning and go for a run. Didn't specify how long, could be 1 mile, could be 6, but I just wanted to see what would happen if I did that day in and day out. And it's December 3rd. And aside from my travel schedule, I have gotten up every morning and gone for a run. And it's like I get home from the run and don't even feel like I need to drink coffee. I mean, I do, but it just wakes me up and gets me prepared for the day in a way that coffee can't, in a way that energy drinks can't. And so I'm just such a big fan and believer in physical movement in order to accelerate everything else that happens.
It's interesting, Koula, that you said when you started your running, you didn't really say, I'm going to go out and run 3 miles every day. You just said you're going to get started. And there's a great book on habits, tiny habits, and it's a great book. It talks about just getting started. Once you get started, it doesn't have to be a lot. It could be just like walking around the block, but do that one day, and the next day you might walk around the block and make it a block and a half. And it's amazing how you ultimately work your way into a habit and get better and better as you go forward. So, that's, you intuitively knew that was the way to go. I doubt if you read the book, because you don't read that many books.
I do read your books, if that counts for anything.
Well, you have to read those.
All right, question number 2. Doug graduated from Dartmouth with a degree in philosophy and then went on to run a wildly successful hedge fund. He never took a single math class or a single econ class in college, but yet was still very successful with his hedge fund. David, what is it about Doug's leadership that made him so successful in this field that he didn't really know much about going into it?
Well, he didn't know a lot about it, but he got started in it, sort of like your running that we were just talking about. And then he realized that he really liked it. And then once he realized he really liked it, he got very curious about it. And he's a very competitive person. And so he wanted to get better and better. And he adopted what I think every great leader does. It's a habit that they've got to master if they're going to really maximize their success. He adopted the habit of learning and getting better at everything that he does. And, he didn't have to have an MBA and to perform in the world of finance. And by the way, I had a bachelor in journalism degree. I didn't have an MBA either, but I learned business because I fell in love with business, and I did it for the same reason that Doug did. I wanted to be good at what I hoped to achieve in the world of business, and I knew that learning mindset was what it was going to take. So I had to learn finance, and I had to learn what it was like to deal with the markets, and just like he did. Doug is a classic example of what happens when you're an active learner, when you learn something and then put it into action.
He talks a lot in the episode about cultivating imagination and this idea of curiosity being something that's so important in leadership. The ways that he cultivates his imagination so that he can stay innovative and continue that drive to be an active learner. He reads a lot. He thinks a lot, and he plays a lot of chess. He says that chess is a mechanism he uses to stay curious and to continue to cultivate his imagination. So I think, incorporating those habits into your day and into your work and into your life that keep you curious and keep you wanting to learn is something that's obviously served Doug well and something we can all learn from.
I think, Koula, one of the things that's really interesting about Doug is that you think about what he really was good at or is good at. He was great in finance. He loved finance. He's great at chess. He loved chess. He's a top-notch chess player. Then he falls in love with pickleball. And guess what? He gets really good at it. I always say the reason why you want to love what you do is usually you're pretty good at it when you get after it. If you don't love what you do, you're usually not that good at it. And I think he's a classic example of how curiosity and learning comes into play when you actually find the things that you love and then do them.
Question number 3. During Doug's time as the founder of Seneca Capital, he had a fiercely loyal team that stayed with his company for over 15 years. Now, the financial industry is one that's wildly competitive, and yet his people stuck with his firm for the long haul. How can leaders in a competitive industry like Doug's retain their top talent?
I think it's true in every industry, Koula, that you basically have to do two things to retain your top talent. Number one, you have to be a boss or a coach that people really respect, and the people believe that they believe in you as a person that works for that person. And nobody will care about you until you care about them. And I think being a good coach is really instrumental. The other thing is people want to feel appreciated for what they do. So when they do a good job, they want to be acknowledged in one way, shape, or another. Either a pat on the back or the bonus that reflects the kind of performance you had that helped the team go forward. But you feel like you're really appreciated. It has been quantified over and over again. The two reasons why people leave organizations is they don't get along with their coach and they don't feel appreciated. I think the third thing that really great leaders do, though, is they see the people on their team and they challenge them, and they give them different responsibilities that really test their mettle and test their ability to perform and gets them truly engaged. And so when you can go to work and like who you're going to work for, feel appreciated, and then get challenged in a really powerful, meaningful way that grows you as an individual, it makes it very difficult to leave. And, I think a lot of times high-powered leaders leave because they don't feel like they're growing. So give them that extra assignment that pushes them and challenges them, I think is very important.
He said when you asked him this question in the interview that one of the things that he believes kept his people was that among the whole team there was no pride of authorship. And I love that sentiment. He said he didn't care if it was his idea or someone else's idea. No one really cared who got the credit for it. And I think, to your point about appreciating everybody, showing recognition and creating this environment where everyone knows that they count, I think that idea of having no pride in authorship is one that is so important and also puts everyone at ease because they know that there's no internal kind of like competition that comes off in a negative way. Everybody's in it for the same reason.
Yeah, I think what he was basically saying is that everybody was, on the boat, in the boat, and rowing the boat, and with synchronicity, which I think is really important. In the world of finance, you get rewarded for what you kill. It's like, what'd you kill, and then you get paid for what you kill. And I think it is something that is kind of ingrained in that environment. So when you've got an egalitarian culture where everybody is treated the same and valued the same and then is paid on the basis of what they bring in, I think that really works in the world of finance and also in almost every other category.
I love it. So good, David. Doug Hirsch, what a fascinating leader to learn from.
I'll never tell him that. I know he thinks he's kind of like the Renaissance man, but to me, he's just Doug Hirsch.
Do you think you could beat him in pickleball?
No.
No chance.
Well, I don't know because he's a good athlete, but I don't know if he's a really great athlete. I might be able to take him down.
Doug Hirsch, if you're listening, the challenge is on. Let us know if you accept. Well, that does it for our episode of 3 More Questions for today. Thank you so much for tuning in to How Leaders Lead. We're on a mission to make the world a better place by developing better leaders. And if you carve out a little time with us each and every week, we'll help you build the confidence you need to lead well.
And coming up next on How Leaders Lead is Jared Belsky, the CEO of Acadia, one of the top advertising agencies in our country today.